Sock Gang, Crunk Gang, welcome back to the channel, man. We're here to react to Invincible Season 4, Episode 5 breakdown, you know what I'm saying? Because I just reacted to the episode just now. We gotta watch this breakdown, bro. That shit was too crazy. And plus, I can actually upload this shit right now
Screen
rather than I'm
Crush,
still
I'm
uploading
Colton
episode 1
Ogburn,
and
and these are all
2.
the Easter eggs, references, and
That
little
editing
things you
is
might have missed.
crazy.
Hey, welcome back to Screen Crush, I'm Colton Ogburn, and these are all the Easter eggs, references, and little things you might have missed in...
Title card. Title card.
This week's episode is titled
Ooh,
Give Us
wee.
a Moment, which is what Omni-Man says to Mark and Oliver during this issue of the comic. Now, he doesn't actually say this line during the episode, since Debbie finds him on Earth a different way, so maybe the line was cut from the original script, but I'm getting a little ahead of myself. The episode opens on Eve caught in that awkward position of looking at someone's pet photos.
Want to see a video?
Now, I love the subtle jokes here. Eve says,
Does he have two buttholes?
to which Alan replies,
He's full grown.
so Alan assumes that Earth pets also have two buttholes, which is funny considering that he's made assumptions about other Earth customs before.
You have those on Earth, right? Douchebags.
Then we get our title card, which cracks much more this time compared to the previous episodes. This is symbolic of how episode 5 is the beginning of the Viltrumite War. So Nolan fills in Mark on all the Viltrumite lore that we learned in episode 2 of this season. When Nolan talks about the Viltrumite breeding mission, he says,
something good did come out of it. You.
which mirrors Adam Eve's origin. We learned in the Adam Eve special that Eve is a miracle lab experiment, and her siblings weren't so lucky. Now, if episode 2 was the Nolan apology tour, then this episode is the Nolan humbling hour. Starting in this conversation, every character calls out Omni-Man for his lacking apologies and avoidance toward real issues. Mark points out how Nolan comes to Earth for help and tries to give his son space, but Invincible says,
except I still don't have a choice, do I?
Nolan is only here making amends when Mark has no choice but to help his father. So whether or not Mark chooses to forgive his father, Nolan knows that his son won't turn down the fight. So Mark then says that seeing his mom would be a bad idea, and he tells his dad that Debbie took a long time to recover, which is true. She spent all of season 2 rightfully pissed at Omni-Man. Mark says,
Who's the apology for? Her or yourself?
which hits Omni-Man deeply. He'll consider these words for the next apologies with Debbie, Art, and sort of Oliver. Now, Mark just had this talk with Nolan, and he knows the penance that Nolan is seeking is mainly selfish. Granted, I don't think Nolan is lying throughout this episode, at least not to the other characters. He is trying to repair these broken relationships, but Debbie points out the hypocrisy during their conversation. Now, speaking of, Nolan and Debbie, they finally talk again, and it is a real gut punch. The comic conversation lasted only a single page because Debbie stumbled upon Nolan's trip home to Earth. Now, in the show, Debbie invites Nolan in. She invites this conversation into her home, even though she knows it'll go badly. Now, during his apology, Nolan puts emphasis on his age.
I'm almost 1,000 years old, but 20 years with you made me human.
Which sounds sweet in his head, but he has to remember that bringing up 20 years to a human, that's a long time, like roughly a fourth of a human lifespan. Debbie then calls Nolan a murderer, and not to diminish the destruction that...
I was also saying, like, yo, I'm 1,000 years old, but 20 years out of 1,000
as well. Now, it
changed my ways, like...
good, as episode 4 established, but it's still murder. Next, we're officially introduced to Tech Jacket. We mentioned in our first breakdown of this season that Tech Jacket is a cross between Green Lantern and Blue Beetle. Zach Thompson was an ordinary high school student who dreamed of space when one day a Geldarian spaceship crashed near his home. The Geldarians are a race of aliens who invented the Tech Jackets, a highly advanced war armor. The dying Geldarian ship was about to explode, so he gifted his Tech Jacket to Zach in order to save him from the blast. The other Geldarians thought Zach stole the Tech Jacket, but after he helped them in their war against the Kresh, they let Zach keep the Tech Jacket armor to defend Earth. Now, the reason Zach doesn't fight crime as much as the other heroes is because he's still a high school student. Now, the Invincible show has made one change to Tech Jacket, switching him to a her named Zoe Thompson. Now, the show also did this with Shrinking Ray, who had no story in the original book, but we got to see a little bit of her new backstory in season 3. Now, Tech Jacket fights a big Frankenstein-looking monster named the Walking Dread, which is a reference, of course, to Invincible creator Robert Kirkman and his other very popular series, The Walking Dead.
What's that noise? Is it danger?
Oh, sorry. I was just using my Fume as a fidget toy. You guys know Fume. They're one of the long... taking sons from their mothers, but in this case, the recruiter is Debbie's ex-husband. Now, Mark has to clarify that this isn't for Nolan, it's for the protection of Earth. And this
Yeah.
further demonstrates how Nolan is trying to make amends while also leaving the characters no choice but to tolerate him. When they tell Oliver what's going on, he is pissed that Nolan hasn't even visited him. He says,
I wasn't there for my other mom, so I'm gonna save this one, and you can't stop me.
referring to his birth mother Andressa on Thraxon. So Debbie requests a family dinner before they leave, and notice how the kids have orange sodas since they were reminded this season that Mark isn't even old enough to drink yet. During this scene, there's a picture of a green butterfly hung up. Now, this could be in here because Nolan's secret identity was a travel writer, so this could have been something he saw on his travels. Green butterflies are also symbolic of healing, new life, and finding equilibrium, which represents the calm before the storm and how Debbie feels surrounded by her family. So they eat dinner to the song Clementine by Sarah Jaffe. The lyrics are also about a woman who's made many mistakes, particularly with her young love, which is Debbie and Nolan in this case. Now, the song name, Clementine, refers to the character from Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. That film involved two exes who erased each other from their lives, so the song is essentially Debbie saying that she wants to forget about her past life with Nolan and think about the present with her family. And by the way, if you haven't seen Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, watch it. So Nolan goes to visit Art, which is really messed up considering he won't see Oliver. Nolan says,
Just like old times?
which gives us a peek at his headspace right now. It's been at least a year and a few months since the Chicago incident, but Omni-Man has spent his return to Earth trying to just go back to how things were. He said sorry, and he said he's changed, but his actions don't reflect that at all. And it's ironic because Omni-Man was the one preaching to Mark about how they'll outlive everyone.
You'll live to see this world crumble to dust and blow away!
And when Nolan talked about that, he was talking about the grand scale of an immortal life, but he's too far-sighted to realize that a lot can change within a year too. The world moved on from him, which is even more clear when Art says that he's closed his tab. Even though Nolan is having a hard time reliving the past, he is also too emo to build a brighter future.
I didn't know what I was doing. I love you.
Now, when referring to Oliver, he says,
The kid has enough to deal with. Not me messing him up.
which is sort of ridiculous. Nolan doesn't want to mess up Oliver like he messed up Mark, but he also said Mark was the one good thing coming out of his Viltrumite mission. So which is it?
Which one is it? Yeah, pick one.
This is really just Nolan sparing himself and being avoidant. And this is very different from the books, where Omni-Man did visit Oliver and wanted him to go to war with them. Now, when the boys get ready to leave Earth, we get this great callback to Season 1 when Oliver asks how they breathe in space.
How do we breathe in space?
That's the neat thing.
You don't.
Now, aboard the ship, Oliver says,
I've been on a spaceship since I was a baby.
which is a subtle nod to Oliver's incredible memory. Since the Thraxans only live for a year, it would seem that they retain a lot, even from a young age. Andressa could recall her younger memories with Nolan because they were only a few months behind her. So for a Thraxan with Viltrumite DNA, Oliver keeps some of the best aspects of both species. He talked about his great memory in Season 3 here.
I can remember everything from when I was little. Like my mom hugging me, and dad humming songs and flying me around the palace.
Now, Omni-Man is pissed that Oliver is there, but ultimately decides to let him stay. And I think it's really telling that Nolan isn't upset about Oliver taking part in the war. He's upset that Oliver is confronting him.
I wanted to spare him.
You didn't even want to see him.
Now, to Nolan, Oliver interacting with him is even worse than Oliver going to war. Now, as the crew settles in, Telia says that they should visit the med bay for communication implants. Now, in the books, they compare this technology to how Alan can telepathically communicate with others. They all need the earpiece, or else the communication is only one way, which was when the Immortal tried to fight Alan. As they travel, we get a montage of everyone hanging out set to the song.
That was my question in the actual
Apollo,
episode.
which is fitting because the
Yeah, wait for my
crew is
reaction.
drifting through space. The lyrics also mention a hard climb and a past life that the subject is trying to endure, which ties back into the green butterfly from earlier. Now, there's this nice moment where Zoe and Oliver meet and they play video games together. I mentioned just a minute ago that Thraxans did have certain advantages, such as memory, but one of the other disadvantages is the fact that they do age quickly. Essentially, Oliver is growing up much faster than a human or even a Viltrumite child would. So after the war, if these two remain friends, Oliver will soon be Mark's age. Oliver has already outgrown his skateboarding friends from the previous season, and we were reminded about this when Debbie contemplated selling the house.
You'll be as tall as Mark soon.
And I want to take a second to remind you guys that our Merch Madness sale is happening right now. Just use the and take part in our Merch Madness sale. Their trip is then interrupted by a Viltrumite warship, which is another reminder that the Coalition has a mole in it. They are intercepted by 3 Viltrumites, including Lucan and Conquest. Lucan was the Viltrumite
He gotta be
who
Alan's
captured
girlfriend.
Nolan during Season 2 on Thraxa, and Conquest broke out of the GDA prison at the beginning of this season. Now, Oliver tries to keep their spirits up and fly straight for Conquest, but he didn't learn his lesson from the previous season. So Oliver speeds around Conquest, but he almost gets his head crushed in, a scene mirroring how Omni-Man killed the Red Rush.
That's exactly what I thought
Omni-Man saves
when I seen that
scene.
scene.
Their skull caved in. So Conquest lines are great callbacks to that fight, and he seems elated that Nolan is here for the bloodshed. This is because he expressed regret that he couldn't kill Mark in front of him in the Season 3 finale.
I met your father, you know. He showed so much promise when he was younger. I would have loved to have seen the look on his face after I told him that I killed you.
Now, Conquest also jabs at Mark when he says,
"It was mostly your magic girlfriend,"
referring to Eve, which sets Invincible off. Mark says,
"You gotta tell me all your deepest feelings again?"
which refers to Conquest's little secret from the previous season.
I am so lonely. Take it to your grave.
This is a new addition to Conquest's character, which plays a big role in how he dies. So Mark and Conquest take the fight to a nearby abandoned planet, and Mark doesn't let go of his throat. He throttles Conquest back and forth with the Viltrumite soldier battering Mark to throw him off, but Mark does not yield. Conquest ultimately dies because he played with his food. Now, this scene is disgusting. Conquest pulls out Mark's insides in a shot taken straight out of the comics, and while speaking with the direct, Robert Kirkman actually said that he and the team would squirm while working on this part. So when Conquest punches a hole in Mark's stomach, he smiles at the blood damage he does, but we've seen other Viltrumites like Nolan use the pointed punch to execute enemies way faster. Remember, Conquest is the strongest Viltrumite other than maybe Grand Regent Thrak, so I wonder if he let Mark win here just so he could finally die. So now Mark, Oliver, and Nolan are separated from the rest of the Coalition, Alan, and Tech Jacket. We see in the post-credit scene that Alan and Tech Jacket are hiding on the Viltrumite warship, using the Tech Jacket as camouflage. Alright, well that is everything that we found in episode 5 of Invincible Season 4. Special shout out to Ethan Ing, the writer of this video. And I have to say, after last week's bottle episode, the Viltrumite Wars certainly is delivering. So, what did you guys think? Let us know down in the comments below. And if you're new here, be sure to subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified every time we upload a new video.
Hell yeah.
I'm Colton Ogbert.
That was amazing. I cannot lie to you, bro. Damn, that shit was crazy. I gotta hear him post my reactions.